So, if you probably heard by now, Hasbro, the company that owns the Transformers IP, is no longer going to be funding movies pertaining to that property. And this has raised some major concerns among fans who feel like this is going to be the end of Transformers films as we know it. But I'm here to put your worries to rest because there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm going to show you how this is a good thing overall. But before we dive into the topic at hand, I want to ask you guys to do me the biggest favor and like this video. Yes, I know it can be a bit annoying getting this request at the very beginning of the video before you've watched it in its entirety, but YouTube's algorithm encourages it. So if you're rock with your boy and you know I'm gonna give you that awesome content, then smash that like button. And if by any chance you just so happen to be a first time viewer who felt this video was a waste of your time, then feel free to retract that like and give it a dislike. Just rate the video. But yeah guys, about a couple of weeks ago, it was announced that Hasbro was no longer going to be funding any of the Transformers movies for the foreseeable future, which is crazy because people have been clamoring about a sequel to Transformers 1. Even though the promotional campaign for that particular project was abysmal to say the least, it received rave reviews across the board, and that positive word of mouth actually got people to go and sit in the theater and check it out for themselves, leaving many to ask where is the sequel. And I for one am in that camp. I honestly feel like Transformers 1 is a good jumping off point for a reboot because over the past few years we have gotten an onslaught of piss poor turn your brain off Transformers movies, which have essentially sullied the reputation of the franchise at large. Although the property stems all the way back to toys, it's always been a multifaceted one, with the movies being at the forefront, which is a joint venture that stems all the way back to 2003 between Hasbro and Paramount. And what's funny is that the Transformers movies were never meant to exist because they initially planned to make a G.I. Joe film franchise, but after the US launched the invasion of Iraq within that same year, Hasbro opted to do something with the Transformers franchise instead, which as you see was for the best because the G.I. Joe film property just hasn't been that profitable compared to Transformers. There have been multiple attempts to try to get the real American heroes to generate billions of dollars at the box office, but to no avail. But the Transformers film franchise has managed to do that 3 times over, and at the time we felt like they couldn't be stopped. Michael Bay was in his bag. He was at his A game with the franchise and he could do no wrong, but it wouldn't take long for the cracks to show. Although the first entry in the Bayverse series launched to generally positive reviews, praising it for its groundbreaking visual effects and exhilarating action, it would be those very same elements that would be criticized for future installments. Many critics found the action hard to follow due to the busy pieces of the Transformers, not to mention that Michael Bay's trademark explosions proved to be very mind-numbing, but arguably the worst aspect of the movies proved to be the humans, which many fans were willing to forgive considering the fact that the first entry had a lot to establish. But the humans would prove to have a perfect attendance record and would continue to steal more screen time from the characters these films were named after. And for the most part, this didn't necessarily affect the ticket sales for the Transformers movies. A lot of people were still tuning in to see what they had to offer, which in my honest opinion is largely accredited to the movie trailers, which Michael Bay had a hand in editing. Although Revenge of the Fallen was produced during a writer's strike, it still managed to pull in just as much money as the first installment at the box office. And Transformers Dark of the Moon would be the first installment to cross that $1 billion threshold, with Age of Extinction following suit. And many would argue that the cracks would begin to show around Transformers The Last Knight, but I would argue that it began to show around the previous installment, which is Age of Extinction. And I know a lot of you guys are going to question that considering the fact that I just said that Age of Extinction was the second movie to cross that $1 billion threshold, but it's important to point out that Age of Extinction had higher box office earnings in other countries than it did in its native region, which was the US. American moviegoers had already begun to experience fatigue from the franchise, but its international appeal was still going stronger than ever, particularly in China, where it became their highest grossing film at the time, amassing a whopping $320 million in revenue. At the end of its theatrical run outside of North America alone, the film would gross over $800 million, which is 77.8% of its gross total earnings, with China's box office market being the leading contributor. And make no mistake, this is something that wasn't necessarily a fluke. This was something that Paramount and Hasbro had planned, considering the fact that the third entry could have made a lot more money had they chosen to debut it over in Japan and China, which is why Age of Extinction would have its worldwide premiere in Hong Kong a week before it premiered everywhere else. Paramount would even go the extra mile by filming some of the movie in China and feature some of their homeland talent. And while that strategy proved to be a lucrative one, when it comes to the long run of things, it proved to be the opposite. And it's that these movies were becoming quite stale. They didn't bring anything new to the table, they weren't trying to reinvent the wheel, and they definitely weren't trying to show respect to the source material whence they came from. They had managed to leave a negative imprint on the franchise at large, and it's because of that negative imprint that they would see diminishing returns at the box office for later installments. Transformers: The Last Knight would have the highest budget of $260 million into production, but would only receive $605 million at the box office. And to me, that was very much warranted, since this movie also did what all the other films did, which is issue a lot of explosions and unnecessary human inclusion. What didn't warrant the lackluster box office performance was Bumblebee, because it turned out to be a solid film and a breath of fresh air. But it's hard for a film to have a huge turnout when people associate it with bad films from the past. Not to mention that even though this project was said to be the start of a brand new universe, it didn't separate itself from the Bay movies enough. The decision to make the film a reboot was very last minute, which is why the visual makeup looked very similar to that of the Bay franchise. It also didn't help that Paramount refused to flat out say that it was in fact a reboot, because they wanted to retain their Bay farmers community, which brought them billions at the box office from the previous installments. And instead of retaining the overall atmosphere that they had established in Bumblebee, they would revert back to the Bayverse style in Transformers: Rise of the Beast, killing what little chance they had of redeeming themselves to the fans. And you guys already know the story about Transformers 1. The marketing was abysmal, and fans had lost what little faith they had left. To make matters worse, Hasbro's longtime CEO Brian Goldner unfortunately passed away to cancer on October 12, 2021. His original vision was of Hasbro becoming a multimedia company big on brand content like Disney, and he wanted to expand this Transformers cinematic universe. But now he's not with us, which brings us to the new Hasbro CEO, Chris Cox, which is the man who originally made the announcement that Hasbro is going to stop co-financing movies. And this has the Transformers moviegoers up in arms, because they truly believe that this is the end of Transformers movies being produced. But I'm here to say that that's not necessarily the case. This isn't the Ragnarok of Transformers films as we know it. That doesn't mean that Paramount is going to stop producing these movies. It just means that Hasbro isn't going to be putting their own money into the film's productions. While this announcement may seem like it's new, it's kinda old. I saw this coming back a couple years ago when Hasbro announced that they were putting their film division Entertainment One up for sale, which was a smart move because they would only lose money from Rise of the Beast and Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves the following year. And just last year, Hasbro laid off 1,100 employees across all their divisions. So the future of the Transformers movie franchise lies entirely in the hands of Paramount now, which some might argue is a bad thing considering the fact that Paramount is tone deaf, not to mention that the executive producer for these films is hell-bent on retaining that Bayverse audience. But I'm hoping that after seeing the overwhelmingly positive reviews of Transformers 1 that they'll stay the course and continue with that level of storytelling. But anyways, we gotta talk about why this is a good thing, and it's mainly in regards to Hasbro's renewed focus on high profit areas like licensing and entertainment. Chris Cox, the current CEO that I mentioned earlier, just so happens to come from Microsoft, and he stated that they're going to shift their funds into financing video games, particularly Transformers games, which is great news in my opinion, because this ensures that we're at least going to get a lot of budget put into these games, and they're going to be on the same level of quality as War 4 and Fall of Cybertron. And I have been wanting this for the longest time, because it seems like Hasbro was just putting the Transformers brand into the hands of game developers that didn't really care for it like that. They just wanted to make a quick cash grab project. Although it was announced 2 years ago back at the Game Awards, Transformers Reactivate has little to no motion going. There hasn't been any murmurings about it from the officials that are said to be developing it, not to mention that Hasbro has yet to say a word about it. But given the fact that Hasbro has announced that they're going to be directly involved with these games from a finance standpoint, I'm hoping that this gets the cogs moving approving for that particular project, as well as other ambitious projects that talented developers want to work on. I honestly feel like Hasbro should look at what other companies are doing, such as Marvel Entertainment, in regards to how they license out their properties, because they have been absolutely killing it on the gaming side of things. The Marvel Spider-Man series has been doing very well, and Marvel Rivals has seen a ginormous reception, with many players dubbing it the Overwatch killer. If Hasbro can follow a similar business strategy to that one, then I feel like they can make a lot of money and a lot of great games. But with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you guys and ask you what you think about this. Do you feel like this is a great thing, or do you feel like the Transformers films are doomed? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, I ask that you like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. But if you really enjoyed this video, it would help me out tremendously if you shared it with all your friends and followers on all the different social media outlets. Sharing really makes a difference. But this is your boy RBG, aka the Random Black Gamer, signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.